I'm just Nick, and this is the Earthquaker Devices Grand Orbiter Phaser. Gratuitous harmonics. I like this phaser, and I don't usually like phasers very much. Most phasers are either too kind of gloppy and or too kind of bright and fatiguing, and I just, they get all over your tone and don't leave you with much room to actually express yourself. This phaser somehow manages to be capable of a huge range from extremely subtle to extremely extreme, and at the same time somehow remain very musical through that range. Off the top of my head, I'm going to say it has something to do not just with the way the ranges are set, but something to do with the way it's handling the clean signal. I can't tell you what it is, but somehow there seems to be some clarity to it and some attack to your note that allows for some expressiveness that just isn't there in a lot of phasers. Now, this phaser has a few more controls than most phasers. There's lots of one-knob phasers and two-knob phasers. This is a four-knob, two-switch phaser. Well, it's also vibrato. We'll get to that in a second. So that's one reason why there's a little bit more in the way of controls. But these controls are actually useful. They're useful. What isn't useful that comes out of Akron? Rubber, Devo, Earthquaker devices. I'm sure there's lots of other great things that come out of Akron too. Those are the ones I know about. So listen, you got a depth and a rate. Those are kind of familiar to us, right? The depth is going to be sort of how far the sweep goes frequency-wise. That's at the maximum. A big, deep wah, wah. And if we go down close to the minimum, we get a very subtle effect, right? Barely perceptible. It's subliminal. Don't worry, I'm not going to play the rest of that. So, a lot of range and the ability to use phasing in very, very, very subtle ways, which is useful. Because especially if you're layering parts and you kind of want to provide a little bit of swim, but not really just scream phaser, here's my phaser, you can do that with this thing. The rate control is both a knob and a switch that switches between a high and low range. On the low range, with the knob turned down, this thing is so slow that it's really slow. And in fact, the LED on the front, which signals the rate to you, lets you know what it is. When it's on this really slow range, it goes off and you're like, oh my God, the thing just died, or the battery died, or the power supply died. In fact, no cause for concern. It's just on a very slow rate. Sooner or later, that light's going to come back on. See? There it goes. And at these very, very low sweep rates, this thing is more like a filter effect. It's just kind of providing a kind of resonant sort of effect that's more of a tone shaping tool than a modulation really at those slow speeds. And of course, when you go to the high speed, it goes up to a crazy fluttery thing that's so fast. Yes, the LED is blinking here, but it's not blinking there because the frame rate on the camera can't keep up with it. And that's when we get into sort of interesting sort of bubbles but they still remain musical. There's enough clean there that you could actually imagine. You know, you could kind of use that bubbliness. I could. I know I could. Without it being just a special effect. You can use it as a musical component. Let's put it that way. So, a lot of range there. And then you have these two controls, sweep and resonance. The resonance control on this Grand Orbiter is really the regen control, and it's kind of going to control the intensity of the effect. So again, for more subtlety, even if we have a pretty deep sweep, we're going to get a little bit more subtle. It's going to be a little bit less sharp. I'm going to go to slightly slower speed so you can see what I mean. As we increase the resonance, we get a more pronounced effect. I'm just going to leave it at that. Meanwhile, you have the sweep control, which controls the cutoff frequency of the phasing. And we're going to have a sort of darker phasing tone with a turn counterclockwise. Sort of down in the wah, wah, wah. When we come up here, it's going to be more in the wah, wah, wah. See? Wah, wah, wah. But these ranges are usable all the way through. All the way through. Which means somebody really listened, made them work right. I guess that Earthquaker Devices dude. I think his name's Jamie. Seems like a really nice dude. But somebody was listening. I assume it was him. And when somebody's listening, that's when good shit happens. You got a whole other effect here, as I mentioned. You have a vibrato. And to make it work good, you turn down the resonance and you turn up the depth, and then you adjust the rate and sweep to taste. And you're going to get some pitch shifting vibrato that will give you that nice kind of spooky seasick quality that we all crave. It will mess with your vestibular system. Oh boy, it's already making me feel a little dizzy. Maybe that's the Grand Orbiter thing. Maybe it's a reference to space sickness. You know, the temporary affliction that causes astronauts, cosmonauts to puke in their spacesuits, which I gather is a really unpleasant thing. Various space agencies have spent an enormous amount of time and money trying to find ways to combat space sickness, including biofeedback systems that let an astronaut or cosmonaut know early on when, I think by tracking eye movement and body temperature and other things, perhaps clamminess of skin, let a cosmonaut or astronaut know when space sickness is about to come on so that they can take steps to, hopefully, suppress it. Apparently there are things you can do with your eyes or something else. I don't know. Anyway, maybe that's the reference. It gets real spooky here. Roll back the tone on your guitar. Maybe you can get some nice spooky kind of organy sounds. You've had enough of that, and I think I've made my point. This is a good box. If you're looking for a phaser with a lot of range, capable of great subtlety, as well as some special effects, can't really go wrong. Get a hold of folks at Rock and Roll Vintage. Have them hook you up with the Grand Orbiter. And until next time,